Hello, welcome to the second part of this series. In this video we will discuss objects and classes and how Python implements them. Let's go. The first good news about objects is that you already use them if you wrote something in Python. Here I'm using a command line interface, the Python shell, which is more than enough for what I want to show you. And the first thing I can do here is to initialize a variable a equals 6, which, well, it works. A has the value 6. But it turns out a is not just a recipient for a value, it's something more complex. It's an object. So it has also functions, not only data, as we said. The first thing we can do with an object is to get the type of the object, so we can use the built-in function type that tells us the type of A. The answer Python gives us is class int. So int stands for integer, because Python correctly guessed that 6 is an integer. Class is a new word. It's the way Python identifies types. It's a bit more complex than this, but for the time being, let's say class is a synonym of type. I can use classes as functions, so I can explicitly name them when I create a variable. So in this case, I am not letting Python guess the class, but I am forcing it. I'm saying A is an integer and the value of this integer is 6, which doesn't change in this case. The last thing I want to show you here is that objects contain functions. We said objects have been created to keep data and functions together. So let's see an example of functions. Functions inside objects are called methods. But when you say method, you are not saying anything different from function. You just indicate that the function you are talking about is part of an object. So let's consider a string, welcome, and let's see if I can run a method of this string. One of the methods the string provides is upper. As you can see, upper has the form of function with parentheses, but it belongs to welcome, so it's not a function called on an object, but it belongs to the object. It's automatically referring to welcome with this dotted notation. And if I do this, what I get is a result, as happens with any other function. So these are methods. Whenever you have an object, you can run that object dot name of the method. I ran the same example in a Python notebook just to show you that generally speaking nothing changes, because the Python notebook just runs Python in the background. The only thing I'm not very happy about for this series of videos is that type of A returns int. It turns out the Python notebook is masking a bit the output of Python, and since we are trying to dig into what happens behind the scenes, I'm not completely happy about this masking. That said, when you run the code in the Python notebook, everything works like in the Python shell. So if you want to use the Python notebook, you are welcome. I already have some exercises for you at the end of this section. You will find them in the GitHub repository that I provide in the video description. So exercise number 1. Find some types that Python provides out of the box. And the hint is use the type function on some values. So if you say type of 6, it says integer. If you say type of a string, it will say string and so on. Find some of these types, as many as you can. Exercise 2. Can you create a float variable without using the dot character? So obviously, if you type a equal 5.4, you will get a float. But can you do it without using the dot? Let's see how smart you are. And exercise 3 is, what is the difference between 1, 2, 3 in curly braces and A:1, B:2 in curly braces? These two things have a different syntax. What is the difference and how can you show me the difference in the Python shell or in the Python notebook? The idea is, now you stop the video, you do the exercises, and then you play the video again, and I will show you the solutions now, my solutions at least. Okay, so exercise 1, my solution is to use type as I hinted before. So if I do type of 4, for example, what I get is int. We already did it during the lesson. If I do type of 4.5, what I get is float. This is another type that Python provides out of the box. The third one that you probably already used in the lesson is the string. And as you probably know, you can use both single quotes and double quotes. They both return the same thing. It's a matter of syntax. Other types that you can discover are, for example, the list. If I do this with square brackets, I get a list. Python calls this type list. There are other things, like for example, the tuple. And the tuple is in round parentheses, and you have to obviously specify new parentheses. So these parentheses here are for the type function, these ones are for the value. So this is a tuple. Another thing you can discover is Booleans. So true and false. Then there is a set, which is in curly braces, like a tuple. This is a set, and there is a dictionary. So the dictionary is in curly braces, but it specifies keys and it specifies values. And yeah, this is how I discover some of the types that Python provides out of the box. As for the second exercise, yes, so the thing is, obviously, if we say a equal 5.4, this is a float, right? My point was to force you to use a class as a function. And the thing is, if I say a equal 5, Python guesses the value of the variable, and it guesses right because this is an integer. So I want to make this variable 5 as a float. How can I do it? I can do it typing directly float of 5, and in this case type of a is float, and a is 5.0, which is the way Python uses to show you a float. But the important part is that Python now associates with a the class float and not the class integer anymore. Now for the third exercise, how can I tell the difference between 1, 2, 3 in curly braces and A:1, B:2 in curly braces. We know from the previous, from the first exercise that the first one is a set, while the second one is a dictionary. But how can I show this? Well, I can show this again using type. So if I do this, I know that the type of 1, 2, 3 is a set. And please note that if I have a variable that contains that value, type of A is the same. So Python understands that we are discussing the value inside the variable. And the type of the second value is A:1 and B:2 is a dictionary. So as you can see, the function type shows you the internals, so how Python stores the class or the type of a variable that you are using. So in this video we discovered that yes, objects are something new, but we are already using them somehow behind the scenes. In the next part of this series, I will show you how to create a new object, a new class, which is a new type of object actually. And we will discover what instantiates an object means and what we can do with methods. Thank you for watching.